Hello, my name is Graham Shearer. I'm the Associate Pastor of East London Tabernacle Baptist Church, and this is the second of a series of videos looking at the book of Ecclesiastes. In this video, we're going to be looking at chapter 1, verse 12 through to the end of chapter 2, and you'll be able to find a link to that in the video description. In the first video, we looked at the first half of chapter 1 and saw that Ecclesiastes is the record of the words of the teacher, this wise man in Jerusalem, who looks at life under the sun, the life that all of us at the moment live, life in the here and now. And he claims that everything under the sun is what he calls in chapter 1, verse 2, meaningless. Or perhaps better translated, vapor. It's ephemeral. It's elusive. You can't contain it or control it. And therefore, he asked this pressing question in chapter 1, verse 3. What do people gain from all their labor? What is there that you can get in life that when you set it against all your costs and all your losses, you can say, well, because I've got this, I'm ahead. And in the section we're looking at, chapter 1, verse 12, through to the end of chapter 2, the teacher pursues that gain through avenues that people have pursued it over the centuries. The pursuit of it through wisdom and knowledge, and the pursuit of it through pleasure and achievement. In chapter 1, verse 12, he applies his mind to study what goes on under the heavens through wisdom. But by the end of chapter 1, he realizes that wisdom is a chasing after the wind. It does not bring the gain that he hoped. That's for two reasons. First of all, wisdom itself does not bring the satisfaction that he yearns for. In chapter 1, verse 18, he says, "For with much wisdom comes much sorrow. The more knowledge, the more grief." I don't know if you've been following social media over the last few days or the last few weeks, but if you have, you may have noticed that some of the people who know most about the coronavirus, who know most about what is likely to unfold in the weeks to come, have often been the most anxious, the most doom-laden, because they can see that the impact that this virus is going to have. They can see the suffering and the sorrow that is going to come. And so perhaps they would agree with the teacher that the more knowledge, the more grief. That when you really understand this world as it is, often what you find is grief and pain and heartache. Wisdom does not bring profit, does not bring gain, because it simply reveals the pain of this world. But secondly, the teacher realizes that although wisdom can help you to make better decisions day to day, it can help you to navigate through life in a more skillful way. In the end, as he says in chapter 2, verse 14, the wise man and the fool put side by side, we find that the same fate overtakes them both. Both the wise man and the fool end up in the same size coffin. They end up in the crematoria. Wisdom cannot avoid the great problem, the thing that wipes out all of our gains in the end. That is death. Both the wise man and the fool face the same problem, and no amount of wisdom is able to deal with it. As he says in chapter 1, verse 15, what is crooked cannot be straightened. So, having pursued gain through wisdom, in chapter 2, the teacher seeks gain through pleasure and through achievement. In chapter 1, verse 2, he says, "Come now, I will test you with pleasure." In chapter 2, verse 10, he says, "I denied myself nothing my eyes desired. I refused my heart no pleasure." And this is not some sort of big blowout, some sort of mindless pursuit of intoxication. No, although the teacher denies himself no pleasure, he sets himself targets. He achieves great things. He builds gardens and parks. He has a great kingdom. And yet even this does not bring him the gain he desires. In chapter 2, verse 11, he says, "When I surveyed all that my hands had done and what I had toiled to achieve, everything was meaningless, a chasing after the wind. Nothing was gained under the sun." And in the second half of chapter 2, he explains why. Because he realizes that though he's had all these pleasures, though he's had all these great achievements, in the end, he will have to leave them to another. Chapter 2:18, he says, verse 18, he says, "I hated all the things I had toiled for under the sun, because I must leave them to the one who comes after me." The teacher realizes that his pleasure and his success are just passing. Time and death itself will eventually rip them all from his hands. He, in the end, has no gain from any of it. And this is something that the coronavirus has taught us all. How many achievements, how many things that we would normally do for pleasure have been taken out of our hands by the new restrictions under which we live. How many things that we've built to achieve are now jeopardized by the uncertain future that the coronavirus has brought. And how many of us have seen our achievements, our bank balances in a new light when faced with something that could take our life itself? In the end, no amount of pleasure and no amount of success can withstand the situation under which we live as creatures in this world of vapor, where in the end death takes everything that we have. So pleasure and wisdom cannot bring the gain which we want. And there's a very important reason for that. You see, in chapter 2, verses 4 to 9, as the teacher describes the kind of place that he was building, the sort of situation he was creating, there are several resonances with the Garden of Eden, the place where God put humanity right at the beginning. This well-watered place full of trees of different kinds of fruit with gold and precious stones within it. What the teacher is trying to do with his achievements and success was build his own Eden, build his own paradise. But what he discovers is that in this world of vapor, that is not possible. And as our society that has been so successful and so prosperous for so long faces the coronavirus, we are being reminded that in this world of vapor, building Eden is not possible. Although we have perhaps the most prosperous and successful generation there has ever been, able to do more than our grandfathers or our great-grandfathers would ever have imagined. Yet still an invisible enemy like the coronavirus is able to put a stop to nearly all of it. We do not live in Eden, but rather we live in a world of vapor, an uncertain world, a world that is always confounding our expectations, a world that is crooked and cannot be straightened. And what the teacher would have us learn from circumstances like this is the kind of world that we really live in. To not get our expectations for this world out of control, not believe that through the sweat of our own brow, through pursuing knowledge and achievement, we can recreate the paradise which we long for. But instead, that we would appreciate this world as it is, that we would receive it as a gift rather than something to search for gain in. In chapter 2, verse 24, the teacher says this: "A person can do nothing better than to eat and drink and find satisfaction in their own toil. This too, I see, is from the hand of God. For without him, who can eat or find enjoyment?" The teacher wants us to realize that we are dependent creatures. We rely on what comes from the hand of God, and that we should be thankful for whatever it is that the hand of God gives us. Even in these circumstances, there are things to be grateful for. Food on the table, neighbours who are helpful, company in our home. Things that God has given us, not to wring gain from, but to receive as a gift. But as we do so, we can also remember the Lord Jesus, who is the one who came from above the suns, from above the heavens, into this world of vapor. And through his death and resurrection, he is the one who is able to make straight what is crooked. He is the one who is able to redeem this world and to restore it to the Eden, even greater than Eden, the new heavens and the new earth that God has promised. In these times of coronavirus, we have a longing for a place of abundance, a place of company, a place of joy. But that will not come in this world of vapor, even when these restrictions are lifted. But it will only come through the Lord Jesus Christ and through his return to this world of vapor, to bring it, to make it to the place that it was always meant to be. And if in these times we remember that we live in a world of vapor, but there is one who one day will redeem it and restore it as it is meant to be, then even in these times of stress and suffering and sorrow, we may yet have something to rejoice about.